because we have a very exciting topic, and I'm excited to talk about kind of a spring 2021 PFAS update. It's been a while since we've talked about PFAS in the news or just kind of like recent information coming from EPA and other state agencies about PFAS. So really excited to talk to you about this today. All right, we'll just dive right in and people can join as they please. So my name is Analies and I'm Hydroviv's head of policy. So today, as I just kind of said, we're going to be talking about kind of like the latest news in PFAS, anything coming out of EPA or states, any lawsuits and things along that line. So we're going to start at the federal level and then highlight a couple states. So yeah, we'll dive right in. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you all about is that EPA just sent over a proposed rule to the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, and this rule would require reporting and record keeping for industrial production of PFAS under the Toxic Substances Control Act, also known as TSCA. So just to try to take out some of the legal jargon, right now, industries aren't required to do any sort of record keeping or reporting on PFAS. They just kind of have free will to produce as much as they want, however they want, without really tracking it. So this proposed rule would just force PFAS manufacturers to at least keep some sort of documentation about what they're doing. And so this rule was actually mandated under the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021, basically telling EPA that they had to create this rule and kind of disclose about the nature of the disposal and possible environmental outcomes from PFAS. So unfortunately, like all other regulation, it takes a lot of time. So OMB is predicting July 2022 when we'll actually see this rule be enacted. So just kind of an overview of what's going on in the Office of Management and Budget. They obviously have to give funding in order for this rule to be proposed. So they're really the last kind of check before it can actually happen. So and then I also wanted to talk about two new maps that the Environmental Working Group, or EWG, has recently updated. So we talk about EWG's maps quite a bit on this channel and in our blog articles. Basically, they're really pioneering PFAS mapping in the U.S. They have a really comprehensive and dynamic map that highlights drinking water that's been contaminated, known industrial sites. And so they're really the only ones that have this map that's accessible to everyone. So EWG has identified 2,337 new locations across the U.S. in 49 states that are known to have some sort of PFAS contamination. And so I've linked the EWG map for the drinking water sites in our bio. And I would definitely recommend checking this out because there are a ton of new areas like I just mentioned. So it's definitely worth taking a look at and seeing if, your area might be impacted. Basically, the really troubling spots are essentially the entire East Coast. You'll just see that the dots are highlighted through much of the East Coast. Minnesota, California, Colorado, and Michigan are also kind of hot spots for PFAS contamination. So like I said, it is definitely worth keeping an eye on that EWG map. So EWG also created a suspected industrial discharge of PFAS map. And this is really, really interesting. So they used EPA data and state agency data to kind of come up with this map of, where are the industrial polluters? which also, again, no one has really done before. And so this is kind of, you can draw a conclusion between where there might be industrial pollution and where groundwater or surface water is likely to be contaminated. So that was really the purpose of them creating this map. So it includes tanneries, carpet and rug mills, coated paper product plants, electroplating facilities, and a lot of other PFAS manufacturing facilities. So the 2,500 highlighted areas on the map included both air and water effluent. So this is a really interesting map, and again, worth checking out for sure. I also kind of wanted to point out that there are no current federal restrictions on industrial discharge of PFAS. So kind of going back to that first point that I made about the new TSCA Rule, these industries have complete discretion over how they want to dispose of these PFAS chemicals. And so, both of these maps are just making people at least aware of where these sites might actually be, so that you can then make an informed decision over how you want to address it in your drinking water. So yeah, this is a great transition into some of more of the state-specific things that I wanted to talk about. And so the first one involves Minnesota, which, as I mentioned, they are absolutely a hotspot for PFAS contamination right now. So the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency recently released this report that found 41 Minnesota counties are leaking PFAS chemicals into surrounding soil and groundwater from closed landfills. So that's kind of a mouthful. But basically, in the United States, we really had trouble figuring out what to do with waste. And so up until like the mid-'80s, we figured out it's important to use this special type of lining to make sure that leachate, which is just basically the concoction of decomposing garbage, doesn't get into groundwater and soil. So kind of up until that point, we were using clay or some other techniques that weren't really protecting the leachate from entering the groundwater. So Minnesota decided to do this really comprehensive analysis of landfills throughout the state, and found some really troubling information. And so one of the locations in Martin County had PFAS levels that were 13 times higher than Minnesota state guidelines. And so it's just, this is just kind of like another wrench in the fire, because we have existing manufacturing and improper disposal of PFAS, but then we also have historic improper disposal of PFAS. So now we're kind of dealing with multiple ways that PFAS are getting into the environment. So it's just something to kind of be aware of, which is why I wanted to bring it up today. And I'm guessing that after Minnesota's latest study, that a lot of states are going to take the same route and look at some of these closed landfills. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And so if you have been following Hydroviv for a while, you might remember in 2018 when we reported on the settlement between 3M, which is a PFAS manufacturing company, and Minnesota. So basically Minnesota was suing 3M for years of PFAS contamination throughout the entire state. And ultimately 3M settled, gave the state of Minnesota $850 million for mitigation and some other public health funding. So, now lawmakers are kind of questioning whether this amount of money was enough because of these recent discoveries with the landfills. So, they're going to have to investigate where 3M was disposing of PFAS, or if there's any sort of link between this new discovery with landfills and 3M's involvement in PFAS contamination. So, a mess, to say the least. And yeah, we've been following Minnesota. They've done a really, really great job of informing the public and informing their constituents about this ongoing problem. So, kudos to Minnesota. But we just definitely wanted to make people aware that they're really pioneering this type of research and these types of studies. So hopefully other states will follow suit. So definitely something to keep your eyes on. And then, I just kind of finally wanted to talk about a specific community to really kind of highlight cost and cost associated once PFAS is already in drinking water. So we're kind of making a big step between just environmental contamination from landfills and other polluters into once it's actually in drinking water. So Santa Clarita, California was recently part of this multi-district lawsuit that was filed in South Carolina targeting PFAS manufacturers, particularly those creating aqueous firefighting foam, or AFFF. And so Santa Clarita was kind of like, we can't wait for this lawsuit to unfold. We need to start removing PFAS from our drinking water now. So they were kind of looking for immediate answers and decided to purchase PFAS removal equipment. And so the Orange County Water District predicts that this entire PFAS removal treatment plant is going to cost $1 billion over 30 years, which is absolutely a tremendous amount of money. And so I just kind of wanted to end on that note because there are things that we can do to prevent PFAS from entering the environment so that communities aren't having to spend $1 billion to remove it from their drinking water. So, it's just an important part of making sure that PFAS doesn't impact humans. It's just kind of like, it's important that EPA and state agencies are kind of taking care of us at the point of exposure and the point of like discharge, rather than these communities having to pay for it however many years later. All of the links to the things I was talking about are in our bio, and I hope that you found this insightful and learned something from it. And if you have any questions, as always, you can DM us on our Instagram page, or you can send us an email at hello@hydroviv.com. And we have a team of water nerds waiting to answer your questions. So, have a good Wednesday, and we will see you next week. Bye!